So one of my favorite shots to get, especially on buildings like this church, is like a sweeping down from the pan up. It's got an insane upward gimbal motion. It's even better than the Mini 5 Pros. I think the only drone that beats it is actually the Mavic 4 Pro. In April 2026, DJI launched a drone that would be the most value-packed drone I ever tested. This is the Lito X1, and with drone tech moving so fast, DJI is now putting pro-level features into drones that cost a whole lot less. If we turn back the clock 2 years, the Mini 4 Pro was the drone everybody wanted, including myself, and after traveling the world with me, this one has earned its spot in my camera bag. So what does that Pro badge mean today? Is it worth an extra $270? And does the Mini 4 have any idea what to make of that little red flashing light? Today we are putting these two drones to the stuff that actually matters. ActiveTrack, return to home, exposure bracketing, and everything in between. I'm sorry I'm late for this one, but welcome back to the Jaunting Ape. Now let's get out there and have some fun. So there we got about 33 kilometers per hour. I'm gonna run both of these drones at this church, and I've been here before on my Air 3S versus the Mini 5 video. But I'm gonna run them in a similar fashion as to how I would normally be flying around a church, and we're gonna see if this 33 kilometer per hour wind is gonna have an effect on how these guys are flying. Both drones are rated at 10.7 meters per second, which is roughly 38 kilometers per hour, and that's a 5 on the Beaufort scale. And if you're not familiar with that, I made a video all about it. You can check that one out after this. But let's get these guys up in the air. This wind test brought back some frustrating memories from all those windy days overseas, where sometimes you only get that one crack at getting the shot. To me, the Mini 4 looks like it's doing a little more of the funky chicken here, but the bigger slap is the angle of the church. It just can't quite keep the horizon level, and you can really see it in the sky and in the power poles. When we speed things up, this is where we really see the difference. I've locked both the drones onto the church with subject spotlight, maxed out their rotation speed, and sent them in for a full circle. As soon as the Mini 4 catches that crosswind, it starts to lose it. It keeps starting and stopping like it can't quite figure out what to do with the wind that's pushing it through the turn. The X1 does a far better job here by staying smoother through most of the circle, and it only starts to stutter when it pulls back directly into that wind. One of the best ways to deal with wind when filming with a drone is to back away from your subject. This doesn't eliminate the movement, but it does make that bumpy ride a heck of a lot easier on the eyes. And the other thing wind chews up is battery life. Here the Lito has a slight edge. The Mini 4 Pro is rated for 34 minutes with the standard battery, or 45 with the Plus, where the Lito is rated for 36 minutes on the standard or 52 with the Plus. But in real world flying, especially in wind, I'd knock about 30% off those numbers before planning a shot. The Mini 4 Pro hub charges batteries in sequence, so the 3 standard batteries you're looking at about 3 hours. The Lito Smart Hub supports parallel charging with a proper 65 watt charger, so 3 standard batteries can be fully charged in about 87 minutes. Clutch packing blew apart. When it rains, it pours. I had the darn drone set up differently. So I had one set at 0.4 meters per second and the other one at 0.1 kilometers per hour. And everything went to hell. I gotta collect my thoughts here and try again. Shit. Much like having that backup drone, it's also very important to have a backup lawnmower. After tinkering on the old 8N4 all night, I had to stand it down and wait for parts. The good news is today is just as windy, if not worse, so I'll get my Hyperlapse wind test after all. And in course lock, the Lito X1 did not like that heavy tailwind as it got pushed way off course. The Mini 4 Pro handled it a touch better, but honestly, neither one was good enough for this ape, but the obstacle avoidance worked quite well on this little branch. In heavy wind, I found a circle-style hyperlapse usually works the best. And pay close attention here to the detail, because the X1's stitched hyperlapse maxes out at 1080p, while the Mini 4 Pro stitches it in 4K. Both drones can save the JPEG or RAW photos from the hyperlapse, so you can get better results if you want to stitch everything yourself in post. And oh man, that feeling when you chew through the last little sliver of grass. Why would anybody do drugs when they could just mow the lawn? So that pretty much does it for these wind tests, and good, because tomorrow's looking like the wind's going to die down. I can go out and get a bunch of good comparison footage of videos, pictures, and things like that. Believe it or not, this was the first time I pressed the shutter button on my all-new Mission 1 Pro, and it perfectly captures a Canadian June night where the sun never really lets go. If you want to catch the sunrise in the morning here in Saskatchewan in June, you've got to get up quite early. It's 4:42 a.m. was the sunrise this morning. Behind me are the Lapine elevators. They are a pretty popular photography site that's nearby my home here, and they are terrific at golden hour, which unfortunately I got up and I did all this and the clouds covered up the sun, so I'm not really getting too good of a golden hour, but it was pretty spectacular for a nice pink blanket over the sky when the sun was coming up this morning on the drive out. And I did get out here to test some photography with these two drones, specifically auto exposure bracketing, which is where the drone takes several pictures, some exposing for the shadows, some exposing for the highlights, and you can mash them together in post to get the highest dynamic range possible. Now, even though both of these drones share that 1/1.3-inch CMOS sensor, there is a difference in how they take these exposure bracketing. Both drones are capable of doing 12 megapixels. However, the Mini 4 will take up to 7 different brackets, while the Lito stops at 5. And the other place where the Mini 4 wins here is that it can do the exposure bracketing in 48 megapixels, where the Lito is stuck at that 12 megapixels. One caveat here is that the Mini 4 Pro will not be able to take 7 pictures in 48 megapixels. It is bumped down to 5. The Mini 4 Pro uses dual ISO fusion in video to help squeeze out more dynamic range, where the Lito doesn't claim any magic there. But when we talk color, the Mini 4's normal color mode stops at 8-bit, while the X1 runs a 10-bit color across all profiles. Both of these drones offer up to 3x zoom in 4K and 4x zoom in 1080p. But when it comes to 2x zoom, neither has the same lossless as the Mini 5 Pro, but to my eye, DJI sharpened things up a touch with the X1. For maximum dynamic range, both of these drones push you into D-Log-M. But this is where the Mini 4 starts clawing some points back. D-Log-M unlocks 10-bit color with it, and the Mini 4 also gives you an extra profile called HLG, or High Log Gamma, which is an HDR profile. That's another video for another time. Now remember, the Lito X1 gives you 10-bit color across the board, but it does not offer that HLG profile. To properly test the photography differences between these two drones, I wanted that golden hour glow, but as the day moved on, the light didn't exactly improve. I did, however, get a lucky encounter with this mama moose and her baby, and that's a big old baby. Another massive area where the X1 pulls ahead is with its internal storage. The Mini 4 Pro gives you 2 gigabytes, which is enough for some photos or a bit of video, but the X1 blows that out of the water with 42 gigabytes built in, which is more than enough for a full shoot. And with storage prices climbing, that's a very welcome upgrade. And now that golden hour is finally here, it's time to get into the photography side of this comparison. We're going to start off with panoramas. Both of these drones can shoot in 4 modes: sphere, horizontal, wide angle, and vertical. For white balance, I let both of these drones decide with their auto modes, and they both picked 5500K, which I locked in. Both of these drones can shoot panoramas in either 12 or 48 megapixels, and both can save the separate photos in either JPEG or RAW. But if you want a stitched raw panorama, you'll have to do that yourself in post. These two drones stitch these differently. The Mini 4 gives you an image resolution of 12,000 by 4352, or about 52 megapixels, while the X1 produces a much smaller file at 8192 by 3154, or about 26 megapixels. And you can see the difference here with both images shrunk down to 25% of their original size. Now this does give the Mini 4 a bit of an edge when we zoom in 2 and then again 3 times, but honestly I'm more hung up on the white balance, with both drones picking 5500K, yet the tones are clearly different. When we switch over to the vertical panorama, the Mini 4 gives you a resolution of 4800 by 9728, or about 47 megapixels, where the Lito X1 comes in 3000 by 7102, or about 21 megapixels. So again, the Mini 4 is giving you a much larger stitched file to work with. These drones have identical sensors and identical fields of view, so those panoramic differences have to be coming from internal processing, the brains. But when we switch to regular photos, both of these drones shoot JPEG and RAW in both 12 and 48 megapixels. To my eye, the quality here is basically identical when we zoom in through all the ranges. But where I do see a big difference is when comparing each of these 12 versus 48 megapixels on each drone. As I zoom through all the ranges, it's very clear that both the drones hold a lot more detail in the 48 megapixels. Not just in the well-lit parts of the image, but in the shadows as well. And speaking of shadows, that golden sun only stuck around long enough to tease me before disappearing again. If there's one thing that I learned after my last video, it's that get the video and the important stuff out of the way before we do the ActiveTrack test, which we're going to do now. Last time I had crashed my Lito into that bush over there, so this time we'll be doing it the other way around. If you watched my X1 versus Mini 5 Pro video, you already know the story behind this crash. The best part is, for $36, DJI sent me out another one, and it was waiting for me when I got home from work. Care Refresh is absolutely something you should buy. This was the 99th flight I had made with my X1, and unfortunately, it took its final bow, so we laid to rest its beloved serial number. For ActiveTrack, both drones give you very similar controls. The only real difference I noticed is that the Mini 4 adds a parallel mode alongside manual. But the annoying part is the menu covers up the drone's speed. I'm starting off with a top-down shot here, and believe me, matching this speed across two separate runs is harder than it looks. From my experience, both drones start letting go around 44 kilometers per hour, and you can see I hit that with the Mini 4, and when I let it catch up, it drops altitude and stays a little off-center for the rest of the shot. The Lito stays locked in position the whole time, but what really impresses me was the 180-degree turn I make at the end. It actually thinks its way through the move and adjusts to keep following from behind, where the Mini 4 takes easy street and it just starts flying backwards to keep me in the spotlight. Now that's the kind of smart tracking that I can really appreciate. When we move to side tracking, the X1 impresses me even more, and I mentioned this in my last video before it croaked. But once it locks on, it does a seriously good job of staying locked on. The Mini 4 really takes its time here to lock on, and it was quite a while before I could really get up to speed. Another option the X1 has that the Mini 4 does not is near ground flight, which lets it track below 6 meters and it gives you a much nicer low angle of view. Now I'm filming both of these shots in vertical video mode, so with the rotating gimbal, the Mini 4 is doing a true vertical in 4K, where the Lito crops into the full sensor to give you 2.7K. But when I punch in 2 times, I've got to say that the X1 is doing a pretty great job with that crop. Both drones also offer 100 frames per second slow motion, but that comes out as a 25 frame per second file, so the bitrate drops down along with it. The Mini 4's bitrate is 150 bits compared to 130 on the X1, and that might be part of why it looks a touch sharper here. And while I was out there, I figured I might as well test the top speed, so I hit 56.2 kilometers per hour with the Mini 4 and 62.3 kilometers per hour with the X1. But now it's time for me to return to home and take a deeper look at how these two drones return to home, because this is another area where the X1 absolutely kills it. So when it comes to return to home, there's some very good options with the Lito X1 that way exceed what the Mini 4 Pro is offering. And the first thing is dynamic home point, which is a little blue home point that comes up. So normally we've got a yellow home point, and that's what we get with the Mini 4 Pro. It's just going to give you a home point where you launch the drone and it's going to stay there. And if you want that to change, you have to go into the menu and you have to update the home point automatically. This is why I have my hood up, because there's too many darn gators, too many darn mosquitoes. So you'd update it manually by the location of the remote or the location of the drone. And that is good to have, but where the Lito X1 has the dynamic, it's so much better, where you just turn that on and then your little home point turns blue. And what this is going to do is it's just going to update automatically as you're moving along. And this is really handy if you're filming yourself in a car, on a boat, and in this case on a quad. Absolutely a terrific feature. The Mini 5 Pro has it, the Mavic 4 Pro has it, and now the Lito X1 has it, but the Mini 4 Pro does not have it. Another place where the Lito X1 just destroys the Mini 4 is with its return to home. Now, where the Lito X1 kills it here is with the optimal return to home. And how this works is the drone uses its vision sensors and LiDAR when it's flying out from the home point, and what it does is it processes some kind of map inside of it, and it actually follows the same trail that it took out to come back in. And that really comes in handy in places like this where I've got a little bit of a canopy and kind of a long narrow corridor to come down. So I'm going to demonstrate that here, and this is what we get between the two different return to homes. I'm really interested to see how they land. We can see it's coming straight down the pipe here. This is just an incredible feature that I love, especially when I'm flying in places like this. It's coming right down the canopy here. We're going to see if it can land on its little dirt spot that I had picked for it. Absolutely nailed it. Okay, now we're gonna try the Mini 4.
Takeoff. Home point updated.
What's interesting with the Mini 4 Pro's return to home is that you get the same basic choice as the X1, preset or optimal. In theory, optimal return to home will map out a smarter route in good lighting or climb to your preset altitude to come home in low light. But even in optimal, the Mini 4 still wants to arc up towards the home point, fly back, and then come straight down. And I tried way more times than I should have for this video, but not once did I get it to do the same kind of route as the X1. So you can see it's way off, and it's gonna have to stop. You can't land there. Yeah, so that's where it's at. There's the dirt patch. I'm gonna have to manually bring it in. So along with that LiDAR that's giving us that special return to home is the obstacle avoidance. The Lito X1 has a much better front-facing obstacle avoidance than the Mini 4 Pro because of its LiDAR. And that's basically a little laser that it shoots, a beam that it shoots out of its front left eye. And the biggest benefit that we get from this LiDAR is low light obstacle avoidance. As soon as the sun goes down, it gets a little bit dark, the Mini 4 just gives up and it says ambient light too low, obstacle avoidance does not work. Whereas with the Lito X1, the Mini 5 Pro, the Mavic 4 Pro, all of these drones have LiDAR, and this little beam of light, it can shoot in the dark and it can actually see obstacles when it's getting dark out. So super win there. It also is supposed to be better for small obstacles, sensing things like clotheslines, power lines, things like that. Although I do highly recommend not chancing it. Don't even fly around power lines. Try to avoid that at all costs. When it comes to obstacle avoidance and the LiDAR and all that good stuff, there is a little bit of a difference how these two drones work. The Mini 4 Pro has a binocular system, whereas the Lito X1 has a monocular system. And it's been proven that they both work quite well. However, the tracking speeds at which the drone can fly and successfully avoid obstacles are a little bit higher with the Mini 4 Pro, aside from the forward facing, I believe. I'll put the specs up here. Now the difference is the 6 little vision assist sensors, that they're little cameras that are on the Mini 4 Pro, versus the Lito has only 2. And how it works on the Lito is it's kind of like a 3D camera where there's a sensor on the bottom and a sensor on the top, and it stitches them together to get this bubble of vision to avoid obstacles. Now, when it comes to vision assist, that is using these vision sensors to see where you're flying when you're recording. Now, side to side, this works. So when we look at the Lito X1, it's that 360 camera look stitched together. I find that there's a little bit of trouble when I'm getting around small branches and things like that. I can't see them because they get lost in that stitch. Whereas with the Mini 4 Pro, you get a dedicated camera to each angle, so you don't get that stitch and lose very, very important details. If that's why you're using it, it is important to be able to see everything. Hover accuracy is another thing that I need to touch on. Now, since my last update with the Lito X1, it seems like it's smartened up a little bit, but the specs, the Mini 4 Pro is on paper about 3 times more accurate with its horizontal hover accuracy It's supposed to be good to within 0.5 meters, and the Lito X1 is 1.5 meters. So there's a little bit of a difference there. But like I said, when I was doing my test against the Mini 5 Pro, my Lito was a lot more prone to hover away from where I wanted it to hover. But I've done some testing here, and I've tried to put the drones right on top of each other, and they were both holding still. And so I was recording on this thing because I really was expecting maybe a crash. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Another thing that I need to touch on yet is the range of the gimbal, specifically in the panning up, because the Mini 4 Pro does pull ahead here. It's got a much better angle of view when it goes up, and I really like to get those top-down shots. So the further up that you can reach, the better the shot is going to be for me. Now what's interesting is the Mini 4 Pro actually beats the Mini 5 Pro with its range of gimbal pointing up. That's pretty cool. It is fantastic for getting those top-down panning shots. Now when it comes to swapping propellers, these two drones are pretty well exactly the same. You need that little screwdriver to get in there and get your propellers swapped. I really like the system on the Mini 5 Pro. It's the quick release where you just pop it in and out. It's fantastic, but I have seen some problems with it in other people's experiences and not my own, where a propeller just pops out while it's flying, and that can't really happen if you're screwing them in. So I don't know what the deal is there. I've had 100% success rate with my Mini 5 Pro quick attach propellers. So something to keep in mind though, it is not the worst to have to screw them in. It's just a little bit more work, and you have to worry about maybe not bringing that little screwdriver along, but throw it in your bag and it should be there forever, I think. I can't find my gimbal protector for the Lito X1. I don't know what I've done with it. Another thing is the LED lights on these things, the auxiliary lights. The Mini 4 Pro has got a bottom auxiliary light that you can toggle on and off with a control. It comes on when you're landing. And I did have somebody on my last video when I talked about this on the Mini 5 versus the Lito X1. He called me a very bad person because I said that the Lito did not have this auxiliary LED light, and it doesn't have one. I think he found his source from AI, and it just wasn't, he was wrong. So this is the Mini 4 launching in the dark, and I do my best to deliver facts and the honest truth in my review videos. Here we see the Lito X1, and it's pretty obvious there is no light. If we go into the Mini 4 safety menu, under battery info, there's an auxiliary LED option, and here we can set it to auto, on, or off. When we switch over to the X1 menu, there is no such option. And to further back that up, when we look at both drones side by side, you can clearly see the LED on the Mini 4. The X1 only has the vision sensor and the downward infrared. So if I'm missing something here, please let me know in the comments. But I don't feel like I'm a bad person. I don't think so. Not because, yeah, he's wrong.